Good evening, Periscope. Merry Christmas to everyone. How is everyone doing? Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Hello, Cass McCree. How are you guys? How's everybody's holiday going? Hello, M Girls Inc. How are you? Good evening, Merry Christmas. Hello, John 707A. Hello, Taylor B. Day 25, we made it, girl. Merry Christmas to you. Blessings. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, day 2. Merry Christmas. J.R. King, Chevy 33, Love Self 28. Hey, Drea, how are you? Khalees 55, Merry Christmas. How is everyone doing? Alexandria from Virginia. Oh, I'm so glad to hear this 25 days has been blessing y'all. That blesses me. Hey, God's Princess, how are you? Hello, OJRB2. I know, guys, I can't believe it's the last day. I can't get over it. I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself now with all this spare time. Let's see. Happy birthday, Jesus. Yes, I love it. Hello, Sestla, Brianna, Drelford. Thank you, sir. Oh my gosh, awesome. Miss Boyd, you've been here for all 25 days. Hello, Tyra. How are you? Good evening. Hope you keep going. I'm going to come up with something. I'm just not sure what yet. I got to seek the Lord. The devil is a liar. If you are just happy 25th day of 25 days of wisdom. If you've been joining from day 1, thank you so much. If you're joining for the first time even tonight, thanks for joining. If you would like to see the rest of the days, they are on YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube and type in my first and last name, and all of the scopes are on YouTube. So, alright, well, let's go ahead and get started. Merry Christmas to everybody. I am currently in southern Indiana at my grandma's house. I'm sure you can tell by the quilted bed. This is my grandmother's house. She's awesome. So I've enjoyed my day with my family. I hope everybody else has been enjoying their day. I actually wrote my grandma a Christmas poem this year, so that was really cool. She really enjoyed it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and jump into day 25. I cannot believe we have made it to day 25. I feel like I have learned so much. I sincerely feel like I have been positioned correctly to finish 2015 in strength and to start 2016 out successfully. I hope you guys feel the same way too. So I'm going to go ahead and start jumping into day 25's lesson. So if you guys want to go ahead and invite your followers and share the broadcast kind of before we get started, that would be awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you guys for the hearts. That can be my Christmas gift from y'all, because this is my 25 days is my Merry Christmas to you. So go ahead and invite your followers and then give me some hearts for Christmas. I would love it. I would love to give it to 1,000,000 hearts. I'm working on it. Man, I went for 25 days straight. All right, awesome. Thank you guys for inviting followers. Thank you for sharing. It means a lot. I know it's Christmas, so please don't miss time with family. You can always watch the replay. Oh, no, sir. Goodbye. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so I thought it was so fitting on the very last day of the 25 Days of Wisdom to kind of talk about one of the biggest lessons I've learned this past year in 2015. So the past 3 days, I've been talking about the 3 biggest lessons, and I kind of saved the biggest lesson for last. Hey, Boo. Hey, Liz. How are you? Love you. I almost said happy birthday. Lord. Merry Christmas, Liz. I love you. Is Jeremiah with you, Liz? If so, give that man of God a hug from me. Or tell him I say hi. That's one of my kids from Children's Church. I love Jeremiah. He's amazing. If he's with you, Liz, give him a hug. Okay, thanks, Boo. All right, so I wanted to talk about, I say for the last day of 25 Days of Wisdom, basically I think the biggest lesson I learned in 2015 that really, shaped the way I think about things now and completely did a complete transformation on my mind and how I think, how I view life, and how I live is the lesson that I learned about fear. So I wanted to save this one for lesson 3 in the last day, and I want to talk about basically how fear is a liar. So I think that, obviously many of us hear lies throughout the day in our head from the devil about what we can and can't do, what we are capable of, what we're not capable of, about who we are, about the people around us, about what we've been called to do. And basically, I'm just here to tell you guys that fear is a liar. And I think it's so sad to see how much fear holds people back from being who they've been called to be, from walking in wholeness, from walking in freedom, from being in the right relationships, from stepping out, from dreaming big, starting a business, starting a ministry, having children, getting married. Fear will lie to you and keep you from experiencing some of the greatest blessings there are in life. So my goal with finishing out this 25 days of wisdom with simply talking about fear is basically, the whole goal of this 25 days was simply to empower you guys to finish 2015 strong and to start 2016 off in success and not make the same mistakes you made in 2015. Because a lot of times what we find out is that mistakes are very cyclical and we'll begin to repeat them in patterns. So what I want to do is I think fear is something, if we were all honest, we would admit it affects every single one of us. And I think it's one of the biggest things that hold us back in life. So it's my goal to just talk a little bit about fear tonight, how to break that fear, what fear looks like, how to overcome it, and basically set some people free to walk in the fullness of who they've been called to be. Because I believe that if we could get this generation to walk out of fear and truly rise up and be who God called them to be, so many of the world's problems would be solved, so many more people would be saved, so many more people would be sane and happy and healed and whole. So I think it's so important that we begin to destroy the lies that fear tells us and that we begin to live our fullest life now. So that's why I want to talk about fear. So basically, so the first thing I want to do is I want to define fear. And I've heard a lot of different definitions of fear. Some people say fear is false evidence appearing real. So FEAR, just like fear is. Or some people say it's what you're afraid of. But I kind of have a different definition of what fear is and what God's kind of told me over this past year and really taught me. So what I think fear is, and this is my definition, and I'm going to give you biblical background for why I define fear this way. But what I believe fear to be is this. Fear is simply a lack of a true revelation of God's love. That's all fear is. So how you overcome and combat fear is by getting a more or a deeper or a truer revelation. Goodbye, sir. Of God's love, because all fear is simply a lack of a revelation of who God is and his love for you and his love towards you and concerning you. And the reason I say that is because of 1 John 4:18. This is what the New Living Translation says, and I love it. It says, "Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment," and listen to this part, "and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love." So right there, we see when they were talking about fear, we say the reason we fear is because we haven't fully experienced God's perfect love. So that's why maybe you guys have never heard somebody define fear like this before, but over this past year, everything God's taught me about fear, about overcoming fear is that all it is a lack of a revelation of God's love for you. Because I guarantee you, if you could get a true revelation of how much God's love you, all fear would be cast out. The Bible says it simply, perfect love casts out all fear. So if we could get a revelation of perfect love, we would no longer be a fearful people. And where do we go for perfect love? We go to God. So simply put, I'm defining fear as we talk about it throughout this Periscope as a lack of a true revelation of God's love. Because if we had a true revelation of God's love, we would no longer be a fearful people. So I want to talk about some of the fears that I struggled with this past year and how God's perfect love began to come in and switch these fears and set me free from them. I think that these are also fears that many of you may struggle with as well. So I want to be transparent, tell you about some of my fears, and also share how I overcame them by getting a truer revelation of God's love, because perfect love casts out fear. So I think one of the biggest fears I struggle with this past year is that I was afraid that my dreams would never come true, that my dreams were too big, that I would never see myself walking in the fullness of who and what God has called me to be. But what I realized at the root of this fear was I lacked the revelation that it's not fully my responsibility to make my dreams come true. And this is the thing about dreams. If dreams aren't big enough, if your dreams don't scare you, then I bet you they aren't from God. because any dream God gives you, he doesn't expect you to be able to complete it or bring it to pass on your own. So if your dreams are a little bit fearful, or, if you're like me and you like to control things, you like to see things happen the way you want them to, your dreams will scare you, and you'll have to get to a point to where you understand God's love so well that one, God would not be unfaithful to give you a dream that you could not accomplish or you could not fulfill. Two, God's not setting us up for heartbreak. So if God's not setting us up for heartbreak, why would he tell us to do something that's impossible? Three, what we have to understand is that God loves us so much that the Bible promises us that he's working together in all things for our good, and that to each thing in each season there is a time. So we have to understand that we can no longer fear not seeing these things come true. And the only reason we do fear is because we are putting our trust in ourselves. And of course, if your trust or reliance is in yourself, you're going to say, hey, this will probably never happen. Yeah, it probably won't, because you can't do it on your own. But with God, the Bible promises us all things are possible. But we lack a revelation of God's love and who he is, and that's why we have fear. Another thing that I really feared this past year was that I would never fully be healed. So many of you have heard my story. You know that about 2 years ago, I started to go through a really bad divorce. It was traumatizing. It was terrible. It really broke me in a way I never thought I could be broken. I was depressed. I was sad. It was a really hard time for me. And I had this fear that I had gone past the place of no return, that I was so broken that it was going to be impossible for me to experience healing, for me to experience wholeness. I really believed, I used to talk to God and be like, hey, I know you can heal people. I know you're in the business of setting people free, but I'm just too much. Like, I've gone through too much between my childhood, this divorce. I'm just too far gone. I'm just never going to be whole. I was so discouraged. But right there we see, why was I discouraged? Why did I believe I would never be healed or whole? Because I lacked a revelation of God's love, because the Bible says perfect love casts out fear. So I lacked a revelation of his love, and what God taught me was there is nothing too broken for him to fix, nothing too broken for him to heal, nothing too broken for him to make whole. I mean, think about it. If through the Spirit of God, a man could be raised from the dead, if through the Spirit of God, a leper could be cleansed, if through the Spirit of God, a woman who had 5 husbands could be forgiven, then we can all be forgiven. We can all be healed. We can all be whole. Yes, there is a part to do that we have to do. There's a role that we have to do. You have to actively seek healing. But at the same time, if you feel like you're too broken to be healed, that's a lie. And that's because you lack revelation of how much God truly loves you. Another one of my biggest fears, and I think this was a huge one for me, it's that I really had this fear that I would never be enough and never be good enough. It was this complex of always feeling like I was always inadequate. No matter what I did, it was inadequate. I never performed well enough. I never did this well enough. I felt like I would never be good enough in so many ways. I thought I wasn't good enough to complete the call on my life. I thought I wasn't good enough for anyone to ever love again. I thought I wasn't good enough for friends, good enough, for any good enough for God's love. But again, it was a lack of a revelation of God's love, because God doesn't say, I love you based upon your performance. I love you based upon what you can give me. Actually, what we see in the Bible is God specifically chooses those who are less than, specifically chooses those who others count out, specifically uses those that are broken, that are hurting, that are not, what the world would consider intelligent, what the world would consider adequate. Even when we think about how God decided, how Jesus, when he was on earth, how he decided to bring the gospel to many nations, he did it through 12 teenage fishermen. So right there, right there we see God is not interested in your perfection. He's not interested in only your good qualities. If we had a revelation of God's love that casts out all fear, we would no longer feel being adequate enough. He says, the Bible tells us that he qualifies us. Jeremiah 1:5 tells us that before I knit you together in your mother's womb, I set you apart for my purposes. So God had purpose for us before we were knit together in our mother's womb. He qualified us before we were even born. So this whole thing about not being qualified, not being good enough, not being enough is a lie we learn from people mistreating us. And what we have to understand is if we had a perfect revelation of God's love, an increased revelation of God's love, we would no longer struggle with that. One part of that, and one of that big fear of not being good enough, is I really believed for a long time, because of the baggage of my divorce, that nobody was ever going to want to love me or be with me again. I really felt like, who's ever going to want to be with a divorced woman? That's so much baggage. I'm used goods, all of these lies that Satan would tell me. And I'm just being honest with you guys. So really, I just decided in my mind, like, hey, I may really have to settle when it comes to a man. I just kind of may have to take who's ever interested, because I have a lot of, I've gone through a lot. I've had a lot of father issues I've had to deal with, and I was abandoned by my husband. So you think of all of this, an anagram is Santa. Okay, bye. You think of all of this, and it begins to make you have a great fear. So because of my past, because of what I had gone through, I sincerely feared the fact that no one would ever love me again, that I wasn't worth loving because I had gone through this divorce. But again, that was a lack of the revelation of God. So yes, I think it was important for me to take time to come to a place of healing. It's been, I think, like 15 or 16 months since I've even been on a date, even talked to a guy. I refused to, because God told me I needed to take time to heal, focus on Him, and get myself together. But I do know that when God releases me, and at the right time, I don't need to fear someone not loving me because of my baggage, because now that I have a perfect revelation of God's love, love is not contingent upon your past. Love is not contingent upon what you've experienced, but love is unconditional. And just because I've had a past and gone through something, as long as I've taken the time to get whole, to get healed, and to not allow those issues to come forward with me into a new relationship, then there's no reason I should expect less. There's no reason I should sell out or settle. The only reason I felt like I was going to have to was because I had a bad revelation of God's love for me, which made me insecure. But knowing that He loves me and He forgives me, that's the same love I eventually expect from someone, and also will give to someone as well. So it's just all these lies from Satan. Fear is a liar. So I had such a great fear that I would never find someone, that no one would ever love me. And here's the problem with fear when it comes to the idea of relationships. If you are a woman, or if you are a man, so basically everybody on here, and you are single and you really would like to one day be married. I'm single, but one day I would like to be married, and I believe God I will be in His timing, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with whatever that timing looks like. But the thing is if you have a fear that no one will ever love you, if you have a fear that you're not good enough, what that will force you to do is to get into a very destructive relationship and to settle for whatever comes your way. And that's why fear is so powerful, is fear makes us be afraid of something, which causes us to settle. And what happens is we end up in the very thing we were fearing in the first place. So when you fear, maybe I'm not worth getting a good job. Okay, so then you settle for this less than job and you're miserable, which is what you were afraid of in the first place. Or, maybe you're so afraid of being alone, you just settle for whatever guy comes along. And trust me, a bad relationship is much worse than being whole and healed alone. So what fear does is it will force you to sell out, and it will force you to take whatever comes your way. It'll force you to take whatever's convenient, because you're so afraid of what the future has for you. But the only reason that you fear your future, the only reason you struggle with a great amount of fear, is because you don't know truly who God is. You don't truly know His love for you, and you haven't truly come to the place of recognizing that the Bible says that He has plans for us, a hope and a future for us. So once we come into that realization, fear begins to be cast out by His perfect love, because we have a revelation that's He who holds our future. We have a revelation that it's He who loves us. You know what I'm saying? So it's so important that we begin to get a revelation of His love, of who He is, because it will cast out all fear, and fear will put us into some bad traps. Fear is a setup. That's what fear is. Fear is a setup. Another fear I had was that I would fail. I had a huge fear of failing. It kept me from stepping out for a long time. Basically, since I got saved when I was 16, and when I got saved, I remember going to the altar, and I didn't really know much, but I remember specifically telling God, this is the best news I've ever heard in my life, and I want to spend the rest of my life telling everybody about it. So more or less, I feel like the moment I got saved, that basically God told me, I've called you to preach the gospel. I didn't really have the language for it at that time, but I was so on fire for that, so excited. I wanted to go around and tell everybody about Jesus. I was so excited about that message and the fact that He could love an imperfect person, because I'd never heard of that before. But what happened was I ended up going to Bible college, and when I initially went to Bible college, I wanted to be a teen speaker is what I said. But I got there and I got into some of these classes, and I didn't know my Bible very well. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, didn't grow up in the church, so I got there, and in my first religion class, they were asking looking for answers for questions, and I'm just a very open person, so I raised my hand, I answered the question wrong, and people began to laugh at me and make fun of me, yes, at a Christian college. And ever since then, I vowed never to speak about, I promised myself then, oh, okay, I'm really not called to preach. I'm really not called to do what God, I think you made a mistake, because people were making fun of me, and I saw all these people at my school who had been raised in Christian homes, who knew their Bible, who'd been studying the Bible for years, and I had no idea what I was doing. So basically, I had such a fear of failing, and once I saw that I started to fail, I basically shut down that whole dream, and I didn't even begin to say, and I was so insecure for so long, and so afraid of failing, and so feeling like I wasn't qualified to do what God had called me to do, that I was quiet for a long time, and I actually didn't even start. The fact that I'm sitting here on Periscope telling you guys that I know I'm called to preach is huge for me, because a year ago, I wouldn't have even said that out loud, but I finally come to the point in my life where I'm no longer afraid. Here's another big one I had to deal with. I was so afraid of what people would think about me and what people would have to say to me. I lived my life as a people pleaser for so long, and that is such a terrible fear that will keep you bound. But this is what I had to learn. When it comes to my spiritual parents, when it comes to my mentors, when it comes to those I trust, I care about what they say. But those who are saying something that's not biblically based, those that are saying something that is not truth, or those that are saying something that are people that aren't truly attached to me or connected to me, this is how I feel. I don't care. And this is what I've had to learn, and this is beautiful. This will set you free, is that people can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, their words change nothing about your life. They don't, unless you let them. The only person that has power to change your life is you. So when you allow someone's words to change something within you, to begin to change who you see yourself being, that's because you're allowing them to. But I decided last year I wasn't going to allow what people said to affect me anymore. I wasn't going to be a people pleaser anymore, because I was living my life for these other people who at the end of the day went to bed at night and weren't even thinking twice about me. So that's why we have to understand fear is such a liar. We can no longer be bound by what other people think about us. They can let them say what they want to say. I don't care, because at the end of the day, what they say does not change who God has called me to, who God has called me to be, and who God has told me that I am. Their words can't change that. God is unchanging. So just because someone, I've had people say, oh, I don't really see you doing that. I don't know. There's already a lot of female preachers, or are you sure? Like, I think men are supposed to preach, not women. Like, I've had some people say some pretty interesting things to me before, but what I've come to find out is they're not God, and it doesn't matter what they say, because if he told me to do it, it's going to come to pass despite what they may say. So we have God to get free of the fear of people and their opinions. That also is tied to that fear of rejection. We're so afraid of being rejected by people, being rejected by those we care about. We never step out. But the only person that fear really hinders is you, because it keeps you from doing what you need to do, keeps you from dreaming, keeps you from taking risks, keeps you from getting into the right relationships. And the thing is, too, is that you have to understand that God created each of us with a purpose, which means he's predestined all of us to begin to affect the lives of others. So what I also had to learn is I had to get rid of fear, not just because it was ruining my life, but all the lives that God has called me to change. I'm affecting their life too, because I'm not being who I need to be, which is who they need me to be, so that I can affect them in the way God has called me to. So basically that's it. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, is that fear is a liar. So if you're someone who deals with fear, basically what I feel like this last year of my life is God took me through an entire year of studying his character and studying his love. When I first came out of my divorce, my spiritual mother, who's my mentor, she's wonderful. She looked at me and said, if you want to be whole, what you need to do is you need to have a real encounter with God's love, and you need to get a true encounter of God's love. And so this past year, what I did was I began to study God like never before, study his love like never before. And I truly believe that the only reason I am healed and whole and happy and joyful, the happiest I've ever been, is because I have a true revelation of who God is and a true revelation of his love. Because the Bible tells us in 1 John 4:18, it says, such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear, not some fear, all fear. If we are afraid, it is because we fear punishment, And this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. So basically, if you're a person that ever fears anything, all that shows is that you haven't experienced God's perfect love. And when you begin to experience his perfect love, all fear must go. So if you're somebody who struggles with fear, which I think is basically all of us, we should be in a constant pursuit to get a better revelation, a truer revelation, a more, just an experience of God's love and a greater revelation of his love. Because when you begin to understand who God is and his love for you, you will be set free to be you, to be who he's called you to be, and do exactly what he's called you to do. And fear will have no place in your life. So fear is a liar. It is something that will try to destroy you, hold you back from what God's called you to do and who he's called you to be. So if we want to see ourselves walking in a great realm of success, a great realm of forward movement, and just in the fullness of everything God has for us in 2016, we have got to overcome fear. So that's it, basically. Happy day 25 of 25 days of wisdom. If you guys have been joining from day one, you are awesome. Thank you so much. If you're joining even today for the very first time, you can go on YouTube to see all my other messages. Just type in my first and last name, Monica Vandeney. This has been such a journey, and I'm so glad that God challenged me to do this 25 days of wisdom, because it has made me dive into scripture like never before. It's made me have to center my mind and pray every single day. It's been so beautiful. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this 25 days of wisdom. I know a lot of people are probably like, what's next? I keep getting messages and emails like, what's next? So I'm not sure what's next. I need to take some time to seek God. But actually next week, one of my very best friends in the whole world is getting married. So I'm going to be at her wedding in Las Vegas next week. And we will be turning up in holiness. So do not worry about me. But I'll be at her wedding. And I really believe it's important to be present and to be in the moment. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I'm hanging out with people and they're always on their phone. I'm like, are we hanging out? Are you hanging out with your phone? So I say that to say I may not Periscope for a few days, because I want to be present and in that moment and be a good friend to her. And just really, she's moving to the Caribbean after this. So I really just want to spend some time with my friends. So I'm not making any promises or plans for the rest of the year. My man is there. Oh, okay. Lord Jesus. I'm not making any plans, but I probably will sporadically get on here and just begin to kind of share what God's speaking to me over these next few days. But I just hope you guys have enjoyed 25 days. Even if nobody got anything out of it, I have learned so much, and I've really enjoyed it, and I feel adequately prepared to start 2016 off in wisdom. So I encourage you all to spend some time seeking God for what he wants to do in you and through you and in your life in 2016. So I'm going to go hang out with my grandparents now. We're going to watch Christmas movies, hey, and my mom, so I'm excited. All right, so that's it. I can't even get off of here. I don't even know what to do with myself now that this 25 days of wisdom is over. But I love you guys. It has been an honor and a complete joy to just be able to share everything God has taught me with you guys over these past 25 days. I hope you've enjoyed it. Check out my website, wisdomisthenewblack.com, and I have some really exciting things coming in 2016. So I love you guys. Hashtag Scope Family, because you guys are my Scope family. Hey. Merry Christmas to you all. I pray the blessings of the Lord over you and that you be full of hope and joy. And to anybody who has gone through an absolute year of hell, the best is yet to come. Submit to God. Pray, ask him for his wisdom, ask him to heal you, make you whole, and 2016 can be your best year yet, because I know that I'm believing God that 2016 will be my best year yet. I'm so excited. So I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Be blessed. I'm going to miss you guys. Hashtag Scope Family, but I will see you on soon. I know I won't be able to stay away very long, because this is like fire shut up in my bones. That's what this word is. God constantly speaks to me, and it is just such an honor. I am the most happy throughout the day when I'm doing just this, because it is, I think basically what I was born to do is just talk to people about God, because he's so awesome. Okay, love you guys. Have a great Christmas evening. Thanks for joining on the holiday, and I will see you guys sometime.